Hello, it's Tom here, and joining me is Rich.
Hello.
Today, we're going to be looking at Dark Souls 3, but not as we've seen it before.
Right, okay, so this is the PlayStation 4 patch. Now, go back early into the mists of time when we first found out about the PlayStation 4 Neo as it was then, and this was one of the games that you wanted to see upgraded.
Yeah, I did like a top 8 or maybe 10 games I'd like to see upgraded, and obviously we were left with this 30 FPS with poor frame pacing on a regular PS4, which is what we're seeing now. But today, well, we've got a patch which actually addresses it and gives PS4 Pro support to the game.
Yeah, we heard about this earlier in the week, and I said to you that it would be 35 to 60 frames per second, and you were kind of holding out hope for a 60 frames per second lock.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I am correct.
Yeah, we were fearing a Final Fantasy 15 type situation, you know, with the light mode. I think John covered this, where it was a 30 FPS with poor frame pacing, and then, you know, with a switch of a flag somewhere in Squaresoft, they decided, okay, now it's unlocked and it's never going to hit 60 properly.
Meaning that there was no way to get a decent 30 FPS experience on any PlayStation. Actually, I think the lower tier PlayStation base might have been able to do it better now.
Yeah, so the base PS4, and the same goes for Dark Souls 3 here. So if you've got a PS4 Pro, you are now unlocked, and for better or worse, it's just going to waver 30 to 60, very rarely, but it will hit 60. And, well, I will say right off, I started playing this and I thought, well, this feels a lot sharper to play. Despite the fluctuations in frame rate, it does feel smoother, in the hand at least. When you make a button press, it actually does register faster on screen, but you still get the sort of judder that goes with a variable frame rate.
Yeah, so it's fundamentally the faster the frame rate, the lower the input lag. So you will still get that boost to input lag. It will feel crisper, it will feel smoother in terms of controller response, but in terms of the on-screen presentation, you will get a lot of judder, particularly noticeable in like left-right pans, and obviously that will vary according to what the frame rate is, and it changes all the time.
Well, we had a few theories about how this might run, didn't we? Because obviously there's no PC equivalent hardware, not exactly anyway, to what a PS4 Pro can do.
Well, if we go back to when you first looked at Dark Souls 3, seemed to be pretty good on GTX 970, pretty much a 60 frames per second lock, if memory.
Yeah, you could do 1080p on that. That was actually doable.
And the RX 480 downclocked, RX 470 is pretty much equivalent to the PlayStation 4 Pro GPU. So I actually think fundamentally this is not a GPU issue, and it's the fact that we've only got like an extra whatever 30% CPU clocks on the Pro hardware, and that's what I suspect might be letting us down. But even so, there are some elements in here where our lowest frame rates are recorded, which do look kind of GPU related to me.
That's right. I will say we played this in advance and have only just been able to see the frame rate graph unfold before our eyes. And the lowest frame rate recording we've found so far is from this battle, where he transforms and then it goes bam down to 36. I think that's our lowest recording, which is nowhere near where we need to be. Fortunately though, it seems to dwell mostly at 45 and 50 for most of battles. You know, it does feel better to play. I will say I prefer to play it this way than a 30 with a frame pacing.
Well, that for me, that was the big question I would have to you as a Souls fan, which is, you know, what is actually better, because we have actually seen some PlayStation 4 Pro unlocked patches which, well, essentially once you've upgraded you can't go back to the locked 30 FPS. That's the fundamental issue here, isn't it? So the question is really, is it better to have this unlocked frame rate than it is to have the wobbly 30 FPS that we had before?
Now, I would say yes, but I wonder what John would say. You know, he preferred Final Fantasy 15, for example, at 30 with the occasional problem with frame pacing. But I suppose with Dark Souls 3, the frame pacing was a big enough issue, for me anyway, that I thought, you know, going to this, there's still the judder, but it definitely feels crisper in the hand, so... Well,
here's the thing, I mean, the game wasn't smooth to begin with, was it, at 30 frames per second because of the frame pacing. You would have frames arriving at 16, 33 or 50 milliseconds, there was no consistency there. So, you know, fundamentally, it's not as if we've lost a rock solid 30 FPS lock that is properly working, as it were.
No, that's true.
So you have just basically exchanged the 30 FPS ballpark figure for an unlocked frame rate, and there's no sort of super smooth, consistent experience that we no longer have anymore. It just was never there.
I suppose in this area we do get a glimpse of 60. I think we just saw it mainly looking at like the skybox, the sort of...
That's always a really good way. I mean, if the frame rate was completely unlocked, maybe it would be running at 100 frames per second or something. But fundamentally, we are looking at the sky and it's not rendering much.
Yeah, there's a couple of interior areas where there's literally no action whatsoever where you're getting 60, and it feels glorious for those moments. But yeah, realistically, this is the 50 to 45 region you're going to be playing at, and it's weird to see jumping through crates and invoking the physics engine. It doesn't really affect things drastically.
Well, I think my issue with this is that it really does seem that essentially they've just recompiled the game on Pro and bunged it out there, and I'm not sure there's much evidence here whatsoever of any specific Pro optimization as such. They've just, given extra power to the existing code.
It reminds me of Return to Arkham.
Yeah, that's right, yeah,
A few things we should clarify then. Obviously there's no toggle in the options to go back to the way it was. Once you're on patch 1.11, you are stuck. You've got this forever pretty much. That 2GB update essentially comes with a bunch of updates to the game mechanics, rebalancing, and in there is a flag that's toggled for Pro support that enables it to just run unlocked and make use of the hardware in a similar fashion, I suppose, to running Dark Souls 2 in boost mode. That game was always unlocked, and once you enabled boost mode on Pro, you can suddenly hit 60 FPS pretty much permanently.
Yeah, so to clarify, the only console Dark Souls experience that does run pretty much at a locked 60 is Dark Souls 2 remaster with boost mode.
Yeah, was it Scholar of the First Sin, and that's it. Yeah, you're right, that's the only Dark Souls we've got on console that does that. Still a fair way away in Dark Souls 3, which is a shame. Also a shame is going to PS4's output menu and switching to 4K. You don't really get any extras. It's just...
So there's no resolution mode at all? It's just straight 1080p?
No, I mean, we kind of knew this going in, really.
It was in the patch notes, wasn't it? There was no promises. There wasn't even a 60 frames per second promise, was there?
No, it was just support for higher frame rates.
I mean, fundamentally, they have delivered higher frame rates, but there is nothing else, is there? There's no visual enhancements whatsoever.
No, but I had to check anyway, and it is the same game. You're getting a 1080p native upscale to 4K. That's all you're getting there. And on top of that, the PS4 effects on the standard PS4 anyway are the same here as on the Pro, so there's no upgrade visually, it is just the frame rate.
I think the fact that the 30 frames per second presentation was suboptimal to begin with, I mean, in some ways it's a Hobson's choice, but you do actually get a improved controller response. The game actually feels more responsive, so in turn I would suspect it's better to play, and in that respect, I would concur that it is the way to go.
There are a few issues here and there which I didn't realise was that I suppose they were hidden with the 30 FPS cap, but there's some horrendous frame time spikes later on, going way below 100 milliseconds.
It looks to me like it's a streaming issue where you're moving into a new area and you're finding that it's sort of CPU gets a big hit at that point. This is the thing with running unlocked, you just run into different bottlenecks. Great thing about a 30 FPS cap is that fundamentally everything has got room to breathe. There's a bit of wiggle room left over for the CPU, for the GPU. As it is, unlocking the frame rate, you just hit any kind of further bottleneck in the system. It can be CPU, GPU, or indeed storage.
I think Dark Souls 3 though poses a question about what From Software can do with its other games. Obviously from now onwards we're going to have to see Pro support enacted. I think they're doing a new Armored Core game where we'll hopefully see Pro support right out of the gate. But Bloodborne, I think, is on everyone's lips right now. What would happen to that game? Because it's older and it's a Sony exclusive, so that goes in its favour for having a support on Pro. But then again, it's been about 2 years now.
Well, I think from my perspective, we're seeing here what we would see with Bloodborne if they could be, bothered to do a patch. We haven't seen it so far. They've never been sort of particularly inclined to sort out the frame pacing issue, despite a lot of people asking for it. Possibly you could get a higher resolution mode, which may work better for that game. It's difficult to say really, but all the evidence that you see from here is that you would get this kind of similar 40 to 50 FPS outlook.
Yep, I agree. Right, shall we leave it there?
Okay, yep.
So we're going to leave you with this boss fight. If you did find this analysis useful or insightful in any way, please do give us a like or subscribe below. And of course, we have the original source file for this video on our Patreon site at digitalfoundry.net. So feel free to give that a check out. But until next time, thanks for watching.